And I don't use it lightly. Like, this is going to be the greatest event, the greatest sporting event this planet has ever seen.
This pessimism and this worry and this angst has permeated. I think they hear it,
yes,
and I think that they will react to that.
Bang. Go, Tyler Adams, come here, give me your bicep. Here's your armband, it's yours. It's yours. It's not yours this week, it's not yours this month, it's yours.
That guy back in 1994, I would have been expecting in the summer of 2025, looking towards the 2026, yeah, we're going to win the World Cup. Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. This show, well, we have a big show. This is a special show. This is a show to celebrate and look forward, and I guess maybe even look back, as we find ourselves 1 year from the 2026 FIFA World Cup. I can't believe it's 1 year. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, we have another guest. The great Rob Stone is joining us here on set.
Hi.
Rob Stone, you know him from so many different things. He is the voice and the face of soccer here on Fox and so many other sports. We don't even need to talk about them. When it comes to soccer, This man has seen it all. In front of the camera, behind the camera, on the field, off the field, and I thought there's nobody better to bring on this type of show than Rob Stone to give us some perspective, because I think as we sit a year out, Rob, perspective is in order. Before we do that, you're on the State of the Union, and so at the beginning of each and every show, we talk about what we've seen, what we've watched, what we've read. So do you have anything before I go to Mosse? Because I know he's got something cooking.
You guys asked me the question, like, are you watching anything? I'm like, all I do is I fall asleep and then search for the remote. Like, where the hell is the remote so I can turn this damn TV off? I am reading. I'm trying to read more now.
Okay.
I am reading Empire of Pain, The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty. Are you familiar with these guys? Purdue Pharma, OxyContin. It's an amazing big fat read, and it's just how this company and these people just kind of kept literally pushing these pills down America's throat.
Before we came on air, you guys were having a discussion about sleep aids that you use. Mosse's been having some difficulty sleeping, and Rob is, I don't want to say you're a professional.
No, I'm not. No, I'm definitely not a professional.
You had a lot to say.
Coming off the pill conversation, I do believe in melatonin once in a while. I find these days when I'm changing coasts and I need to get to bed right away, like if I go West Coast to East Coast, I need a little something to put me down fast, or I know I've got an early wake-up call. So I do believe in melatonin. And my advice to you was, if you take a melatonin gummy, stay away from the visuals, just read. And then you're gonna wake up the next morning with some freaky dreams, man. And they're in there. Like, a lot of manatees are involved in my dreams, and just random personalities that I thought were no longer in existence in my life, and they're there.
Goodness.
Melatonin, everybody.
Mosse.
And I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there like, Stone's right, I get freaky dreams on melatonin.
Oh, well, the State of the Union folks out there, they'll let us know.
They'll let us know.
If they
can't
agree,
wait.
or if they disagree. Mosse?
Now, should we light this candle? Because we only have a year until the World Cup. This segment is taking almost that long.
All right, let's light this candle here. We shall.
You,
Let's start it here, because as I said, I did want Rob Stone to come on because he does have some perspective, and I think it's important. We were doing a show actually earlier today, and we were talking about the way that we, if we could go back in time, would have envisioned, right now here in June of 2025, a year out from the World Cup. And if you had taken me back to my 1994 version, obviously a whole lot more hair there with my Discman, listening to, I don't know, Hootie and whoever it ended up being back then, I don't think that I would have envisioned 2025 looking like this in terms of the cynicism, and I think more importantly, and maybe more problematic, the apathy relative to this team. I think that I would have envisioned a sport and a team further along. Now, I'm not saying that we haven't made incredible strides, but a year out from the World Cup, I think you feel it. I think we see it. I think we understand that it's there. There is a feeling that maybe this team isn't as good as we thought. And there is a feeling that a year from now, we're not going to do the things that we kind of dreamt about. And that's a problem. I think that's a problem on and off the field because we have, again, not just this opportunity, but I do think this responsibility to make sure that the summer of 2026 goes off in a way that the world has never seen before. Because if we do it right, we can fundamentally, again, change the game in the same way that happened in 1994, and to be fair, in 1999, too, with the Women's World Cup. But I also think that we can show the world that this is not just a World Cup, but this is the greatest event in human history. It has the potential to be that in terms of the size and the impact. But on the field, I think there's a lot that is right now swirling around our brains, and I think a lot of people, either they don't care or they're worried about what this team is going to look like. Is that fair, Rob Stone?
In my world, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. I clearly thought we would be better. Now, this tournament is going to be the greatest sporting event this planet has ever seen. That's like
I think the greatest event.
Sure, whatever. It's the greatest whatever you want it to be, but it's going to crush it. And before every World Cup, before every Olympic, there's always these articles that come out, oh, they're not going to be able to handle it, the transportation, the visa, whatever. It's going to get sorted. It's going to be fine. It's not going to be a problem. On the field, I am worried. We talk about the Gold Cup that's coming up later this month, and you look at the U.S. roster and the lack of experience, the lack of talent really on it that shouldn't be on a roster a year out from a World Cup. Like, I look at the Gold Cup roster, and we're going to sell it hard, and it's an important tournament, don't get me wrong, but if you look at that U.S. roster, you're saying this is a January camp 3 to 4 years out from a World Cup, not a summer tournament 1 year away from a World Cup. I did some number crunching here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I like it when I do number crunching. David will correct me. All right, so 3 goalkeepers on the roster, right? This is before all those little pre-Gold Cup tune-ups, all right? Of the 3 goalkeepers, 2 of them, 0 caps. 9 defenders. 4 of those defenders have 4 or fewer caps, including 2 with 0. 9 midfielders. 4 of those have 4 or fewer caps, including 1 without any. 5 forwards. Again, 4 with 4 or fewer caps, 1 with 0. So 6 players on the Gold Cup roster for the U.S. have 0 caps. Now is not the time to be experimenting, right? To me, now is the time to maybe be fine-tuning, right? Okay, hey, maybe we have a debate in who's going to be the pairing in the back line. And by the way, we should not be having that debate right now. Like, that's something that should be solidified. But maybe it's like, all right, who's going to play out on the wing? Who's going to do this or that? These are like the fine little tuning points that I would want us to handle at a Gold Cup. Instead, I feel like Pochettino has borderline a blank slate. And like, you know what? I'm new. All of you cats are new. Wow me. And I think there's going to be, I mean, you look at the guys who aren't on this roster, Des Pulisic, Robinson, McKennie, Weah, Gio Reyna, Balogun, Schulte, Stefan, like, you're almost you can make a case that these guys could all start, to some relative level. And they're not there. That's a problem. That's a problem for me. I think the great unknown worries me, but also it gives me optimism. And we've seen it year in and year out whenever we're doing a Confederations Cup or a Euros or a Gold Cup, that players, particularly American players, find a way of stepping up, catching your eye and saying, I can do this.
Mosse, are you as pessimistic as Rob Stone?
Well, Lex, I don't think you have to take it back to 1994, although I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about the level of progress across the last 30 years. Just take it back to December of 22, coming off a World Cup in which the U.S. got to the round of 16 with one of the youngest squads in the tournament. There was tremendous optimism about the next World Cup where you were going to have all these players in their primes on home soil, and yet the U.S. has made such a mess of this cycle so far that it's all dissipated. And you're right, there's a lot of skepticism. But just to play devil's advocate on the Gold Cup this summer, one of the criticisms I've heard is that it's been the same nucleus for a while now. It's grown a bit stale. So maybe this is an opportunity for 2 or 3 new players to emerge to stake a claim for a bigger role in 26. And then you sprinkle back in some of the starters with a couple of these Diego Luna, Sebastian Berhalters, and maybe they add something different to the team that helps at the World Cup.
Are you just being a devil's advocate because you want to be a devil's advocate, or are you more on like concern level?
Well, ideally, you would have had more of the starters mixed in with some of these newer players. I agree. It's too many new players. It does seem like... listen, I'm somebody who thinks that the calendar is oversaturated and players do need rest. And I didn't have an issue with the U.S. bringing a B team to the last couple of Gold Cups. This one, though, occurring a year out from the World Cup, I think they could have made better sense of it. It's the only chance for Pochettino to manage the team in a tournament setting that's analogous to the World Cup. It's the biggest chunk of time he's going to have with the players. So the approach is a little bit disappointing. And I continue to say the only two completely unavoidable absences were McKinney and Weah. I still think if the U.S. had pushed, they could have gotten Gio Reyna for this Gold Cup. And some of the other ones, Pulisic, Jedi Robinson, I know they have injuries, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like those are situations that could have been managed this summer, perhaps, if you really wanted to have them. Sergiño Dest as well. There are a couple of other ones that are legit injuries where they're out, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so when we look at this Gold Cup relative to 2026, yes, there are concerns, and I think we've all voiced them. But there is opportunity, and there is opportunity to, I don't know if it's flip, but at least steer it in a much more positive direction. Some of that optimism maybe comes back. Now, listen, we have seen previous Gold Cups, as you mentioned, where the U.S. has gone with the B, even /C team out there. However, I can't think of a Gold Cup where the U.S. has gone in and not been a favorite and 1 or 2 relative to Mexico right now. And I think there's a lot of people right now, given the failures and given the reality of what the personnel looks like for this Gold Cup, that are putting the U.S. 3 and putting Canada above us, maybe even 4 when it comes to the Panamas out there. That's not good, certainly a year out, but that's what this group has to overcome. And they do have an opportunity. They do have an opportunity to win hearts and minds, not just in terms of winning the Gold Cup, but pushing us in a direction where it is more positive. And when I say positive, not only do people believe in the team, but through the team believe that this World Cup's going to be something special. And it's going to celebrate these 3 countries, and obviously from a U.S. perspective, celebrate the U.S. But if and when this summer is done, that's what success looks like to me. And just because this is a team where players are missing, doesn't mean we need to lower the expectations. We should still expect this team to do well. I want these teams this team individually and collectively to come together and to excite me and to do some things in the way that they play, in the results that they get, in the personality that they show. That is something that right now is missing.
Are you expecting them to do well because A, it's the Gold Cup, B, it's the red, white, and blue in America, and we should always be that way? Because I understand that sentiment for sure, right? Like, we should always...
I'm expecting them to rise to the occasion. I think that this cynicism and this pessimism and this worry and this angst has permeated. I think they hear it, and I think that they will react to that.
Bang, bang.
I hope so.
And Mauricio has heard it, and he has sent that message to the players, and that is what I really like. That's one of the things that has brought a smile to my face the last couple of days is whether he's calling out these players individually or not, but he is saying how important it is to some of the greatest players in the world to wear that badge, to wear those colors. And without saying it, I think he's kind of alluded that sentiment has started to creep out of this U.S. camp, and it's not as prevalent. And I know people get upset like, oh, where's the heart and where's the grit? You know, what is heart and grit? How do you really measure it? Listen, when you see it, you see it. When you smell it, right? You know it's not there. And I like the fact that a patch of those players have accepted that and realize it. Like, you know what? The public's right. You know, so many times they nod to the fans like, hey, yeah, we know what we're doing. We're okay. But this time, I think they honestly believe, you know, we did let them down. We have failed them. And I think that has to change this summer. And I think one way you go about doing it is you go, Tyler Adams, come here, give me your bicep. Here's your armband. It's yours. It's yours. It's not yours this week. It's not yours this month. It's yours. Go lead this team. That happens, that will make a difference for the U.S. team this summer and next summer.
I do want to give U.S. Soccer credit on one thing. They've scheduled some pretty good friendlies here. I'm almost more disappointed about the players who are out this summer missing the Turkey and Switzerland friendlies.
The Korea Republic in September.
Well, I'm saying, how often do you get to face European opposition of that quality? Two teams that got to the quarterfinals of the Euros last summer. And yeah, in September, you've got Korea Republic and Japan, and we'll see in subsequent windows. But countries are going to want to come here and play to get the lay of the land. So I actually think U.S. Soccer is going to be able to line up some pretty good games, and we'll get a feel for the team in that regard.
Rob, you mentioned something about playing style, but before we get to that, I just want to put a pin on Pochettino. I get the sense that Pochettino is biting his tongue right now.
For sure.
I get the sense that he does not suffer fools. I get the sense that it's not that he feels like he's bit off more than he can chew, but I get the feeling that he is swallowing some of the aggression and the irritation relative to this group, and I hope that's the case.
Yeah, but he is letting it out. Like he's not saying trigger words, right? He's not calling individuals out, but I think his message as a whole has been delivered to the team, to that whatever you are pool of U.S. soccer talent.
Some of what he is seeing, I think, in his mind, and look, he's been all over the world, but in the way that he thinks is foreign, in that he can't understand how that type of attitude is prevalent, not just for a national team, but for a national team like the United States, and again, a year out from a World Cup. And this is not just a World Cup, a home World Cup.
A World Cup you're hosting!
And
a generational opportunity.
And when he just got here, remember, he missed the Copa America. He took over after that, and he's never coached a national team before. He's still getting his bearings and figuring out what it's like to coach in an international tournament. So I think it would have been useful for him this summer to have as many of the guys that he's going to have next summer to use it as a dry run, but it was not today.
It's such an amazing debate to me. And I think you're like in the old school camp of like, just keep playing. And elements of that I totally understand and respect. But the calendar for soccer, it's too much. It's absolutely too much. And these players need a break. And like when Christian Pulisic came out, I'm going to take that break. Whatever it was, the conversation I had with U.S. Soccer, I swallowed. And I was like, okay, I'm good with it. But guess what? You better take that damn break, right? Like, I don't want to see you. I want you on the golf course. I want you swimming. I want you in the pool. I want you relaxed. I want you recouping. And you know what I don't want you playing? A meaningless Serie A game, right? So, hey, AC Milan, do us a favor, right? Because we took one for AC Milan. You know what, Christian? Take the summer off. Because guess what? You're going to be ready for your club season.
Yeah.
Right? Guess what? That helps you in their club season. Hopefully, it helps America in the World Cup, but should have sat that game. AC Milan, do your part in helping us help Christian.
Rob, you mentioned something about style of play. And look, I know this is something that we talk about in soccer a lot. And sometimes, Mosse, as you know, we can get stuck in the weeds. Sometimes it's this undescribable type of way of playing, but to your point, you know it when you see it. The U.S. has certainly grown and evolved, but there is an element of the U.S. men's national team DNA that I like to think has been a constant, that has been a trait, if you will. When you see the national team and your national team playing well, how does that manifest? What are some of the traits and some of the behaviors? Is it simply they fight hard, they bleed like Brian McBride, and they're in a set piece type of thing, and bend but don't break type of situation?
It sounds so simple, right? But yeah, I think those are the things that your eye is drawn to, and you can read and see and feel. This U.S. men's national team pulled people in. Back in the day, like people, where's the next Dos a 0? Let's go. Can't wait. How cold is it going to be? Great. Let it be frigid. I want it, right? And now it's apathy is the word, because what the fans are seeing is not making them happy, right? And it doesn't have to be just this glorious buildup, but every once in a while, a nice buildup would be nice, right? But damn straight, you should be focused on set pieces. Damn straight, you should have 4 nasty-ass guys on that back line making life miserable for you. Damn straight you should have a defensive midfielder that's going to wreck things up. Damn straight. You know what I want? I want friggin' Joe Max Moore back. That's like literally, I think that's who I want, is that guy, that cat back. Because Joe Max Moore can do things. He can change games. And I just feel like, I thought Weston McKennie was bringing it back a couple years ago. This swagger, like, the Clint Dempsey, looking in your face and not backing down. Like, I almost feel like we need to go out and like start some fight type stuff.
Right.
Like, let's do some petty ass shit.
Well,
let's bump some chests. Let's look at you. Let's stare
why
down.
Diego Luna a few months ago bleeding resonated with a lot of the soccer fans out there. And it sounds stupid. It's just bleeding, but it's a visual display of you are willing to give your blood for this team. Now,
for your country.
It can't exactly, for your country. It can't just be about that.
Correct.
But something as
There's got to be a few of those. Give me some of those cats running around in there.
Mosse.
I think I made this exact comment a year ago when you were on our pod during the Copa America. The U.S. finds itself in a no man's land. In this effort to be more progressive, they've shed some of that blue-collar identity they had in the past, and they're still not talented enough to out-talent the best teams, but they're no longer tough enough to be a real nuisance for them. So it's going to be this interesting toggling back and forth in the World Cup, because there are going to be games early on in the group stage where you are going to want to see this progressive approach to break down, bunker down teams. But then once you get into the knockout stages, you face the better teams. Then can they shift back to more of a rugged underdog, set piece, counterattacking mentality?
I think what the fans are saying or what they're watching is like, okay, maybe we're not as talented as nation A, B, C, or D, right? And we can accept that. We may not like it, but we understand it. But at least we can have the fight and grit to match that or top it. I mean, like that's easy. Every team should have that, right? Let's be honest. And the other thing too is, again, we're talking about our hopes and aspirations for what we thought this program would be in 2026. Particularly if you go all the way back to 1994 with you guys, and we would think we would be so far beyond. We would be in contention to win every World Cup. The problem is all these other countries are growing at a rate that is surpassing our rate. Like, yes, our players are getting better, I think. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. But the players from Spain and Portugal and France are getting better at a faster rate, and they're churning out more and more of this talent. And I don't feel like we have this. I thought we used to have a factory. I thought there was a factory of U.S. players coming up constantly. And I feel like maybe the tariffs have hit the factory and they've slowed down. Like, we don't got enough steel at that rate. And I'm hoping that maybe this Gold Cup gets the factory going again and says, you know what? Hey, this Berhalter kid, it's a hell of a story. Watch what he can do. And Luna, Luna's the easy one. The eye gets pulled to him.
Look, when we talked about doing this show, we wanted to make sure that, like I said, that there was perspective and this wasn't all doom and gloom. But one thing that we've done on the State of the Union over the years is make sure that we're honest. We're honest with ourselves. We're honest with the viewers and with everybody that tunes in. And I think what we're talking about, I think we're being fair, and I think we're being honest as to the feeling and the sentiment that exists out there. But it doesn't mean that it can't change. And it also doesn't mean that it can't change quickly. And let's be honest, I think it
has to change quickly.
I think it has to. All right, so we talked a little bit about how this team and how we want it to play. I will just finish it with this. The U.S., not just the U.S. soccer public, I think the U.S. in general doesn't give a crap ultimately how we play. They care that there's results. And to your point, the way in which we get those results, I guess it matters. But if we were to bend and not break, if we were to concede possession, if we were to get a 1-0 goal that finally got us into the round, in this case it would be the round of 16 or the quarterfinals because of a set piece or something like that.
Fine.
We will put that in the pocket, take it to the bank, not a problem. So standing on principle, standing on romance, standing on evolution is not going to get us where we need to go. There has to be some pragmatism. I hope that Pochettino has that. And it doesn't mean that we're settling. It doesn't mean that we're being rudimentary. It doesn't mean we're being caveman-esque or raw, or that we're regressing. I think we're taking the best part of what we have done and marrying it with the inevitable growth, the growth we have. But the best version of this team, I think, ultimately is the one that's going to resonate.
I just want to remind people, this is the first 48-team World Cup. I feel like we have to go through one of these to get a sense for the rhythms of it, what caliber of team you face in what round. You know, when talking about how far the U.S. is going to go, we're using previous World Cups as a reference, but we're sort of entering uncharted waters here. Now, as far as previous World Cups, you know, our crack staff worked very hard on this. They looked up the FIFA rankings of the U.S. a year out from each previous World Cup, going all the way back to 1994, the one here on home soil. And it's very interesting, some of the numbers that they threw up. The one that really jumps out to me, for those of you watching, is this 2005. Remember, the U.S. shot up into the top 5 in the FIFA rankings, which created all these expectations in 2006 in Germany, and then the U.S. crashed out in the group stage. And Rob, you know this, looking at the last 30 years or so of U.S. soccer, it's sort of been a story of when expectations are low, they surprise you, and then when expectations are high, they disappoint you. We've seen this pattern time and time again.
Well, they're very comfortable.
So we're going to win the World Cup.
They're the underdog, though. They're comfortable in the underdog.
Yes, I mentioned at the top of the show.
We're better as an underdog.
Coming off the last World Cup, I thought this was going to be one World Cup where expectations are going to be super high. It hasn't worked out that way. Maybe that's a silver lining in all this.
Yeah, you're right. They're 16th right now in the world rankings. That is the highest of all the CONCACAF teams. And we're very doom and gloom about the program. And this program is going to be fine. I think this summer is going to be a success for them. It needs to be a success. I mean, they have to be in the final or win it. But I agree. I don't think that's a lock by any chance. I mean, Panama's got their number, what Canada has been able to do. Mexico's got to get better. You know, there's probably a Mexican version of State of the Union down south of the border, and they're probably doing the same thing that the three of us are. Like, man, what has happened to El Tri? Where's our fight? You know, bleed for our colors. And they're kind of going through the same thing too. And maybe that works just fine for the teams in this region right now.
And there will be an expectation next summer in 2026 that the U.S. win the group. And I think, again, that's fair. Even a year out, I think it's fair to say that. To your point, Mosse, 48 teams. As we sit here recording this today, teams like Uzbekistan have gotten in. And by the way, just so you know, Uzbekistan, while going to the World Cup, 38 million population. I think there's a 50-ish to 60-ish community when it comes to Uzbek Americans.
Wow. Somebody's already begun their use. The
White Wolves, baby, the White Wolves.
The White Wolves here. So just because they haven't been there, or just because it's a team you don't know a whole lot about, doesn't mean that they can't come here and be good.
The beauty of expansion, by the way.
Exactly. But saying that, the U.S. is going to get a winnable group. And then there's a whole nother round in a round of 32 that the U.S. should be expected to win. And then we get into that territory where the U.S. has, for the most part, always faltered when it comes to the World Cup. And that's the hump that Pochettino and company have to find a way to get over. And even with this team, with our low expectations right now, we should still expect this team to do these types of things. All right, so when you're talking about these rankings over the year, and we all know that the FIFA rankings can go both ways.
I put no stock in them. The same people that have the U.S. 16th must be the people that put North Carolina in the last men's basketball tournament.
You've been saving that one, haven't you? You've been waiting on that one,
Rob
Mosse.
Stone is a huge Tar Heels basketball fan.
Notice my colors right now?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a break here in a second. But when we are wrapping this up here relative to the U.S. a year out, we'll talk more about it here. But in terms of how we're feeling, you know, I want to think back, and the summer of 1993, we were just talking about the rankings that we had. The U.S., again, because we were hosting in 1994, we were not going to be involved in a qualifying process. So that's competitive games that are out. However, we did play some big games that summer, including against England, against Germany. But the starting 11 from that summer ended up being vastly different than the starting 11 that walked on the field in the summer of 1994. So all I'm saying is a lot can change. As we've said, a lot has to change. But in this look back and forward, it is, and I hesitate to use the word disappointing because we've done so much from a soccer perspective since then. But that guy back in 1994, I would have been expecting in the summer of 2025, looking towards the 2026, yeah, we're going to win the World Cup. We're going to win a men's World Cup. And the World Cup's coming back in 2026? Hell yeah. You know, me back in 1994 saying 30-some years later, damn right, we should be vying to win a World Cup. And we're not talking about right now. And we've deviated, and I understand maybe back then you're looking at it as just completely a straight ahead type of thing, and there's ups and downs and all along the way. But again, it is, and I am going to use the word, a little bit disappointing right now where we are.
Speaking of 94, I believe in our next segment, we're going to take a journey back and do a little compare and contrast to the current team.
Absolutely. With some actual players to once again see how far we've come, or maybe how far we haven't come over the years. Let's take a quick break. Good tease, Mosse. We'll be back in a second.
I would give up.
Not sure things I could say on camera. That would probably put me in trouble, do you know what I mean? But a lot of things.
Like a finger or something.
My dog. That's a pretty good answer.
I don't think there's anything I wouldn't give up. Everything, besides my family.
Maybe the rest of my career, I think I'd sacrifice it all just to have the opportunity to bring it home for this country.
Everything. It's the best thing you can do as a player, so I think you have to sacrifice everything for that.
Everything except my family, man.
All 10 toes.
Chick-fil-A, Shake Shack, Chipotle, Popeyes, Five Guys. I would give up matcha, braids, my cornrows, I would give those up. I would give up my long hair as well, probably. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good list of things, you know? I think that's pretty valid. McDonald's, yeah.
Probably 10 toes and a finger. A lot of money.
I'd say everything besides my family and loved ones.
All my money.
My house.
My life savings. Man, any awards, any trophies, anything I ever won over that, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Did he say he'd give up his dog? That is, it's harsh, man.
Man's best friend.
I guess. I don't know what I would give up. I'd shave my head. I'd wear a American flag Speedo and, run down Sepulveda Boulevard or wherever. I'd do anything. Well, not almost anything. I would do anything for a World Cup.
Matt Turner said he would sacrifice the rest of his career. You mean those 3 club appearances per season?
Wow, Mosse. Wow, from the top rope. My goodness. Oh, my goodness. All right, anyway. Yeah, he's giggling over here. All right, this is Ask Alexi, where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. And keep in mind that you can use our social media handle out there, which is SOTU with Alexi, and you can use that hashtag Ask Alexi, or you can call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297. Mosse, what do the folks want to know today?
Well, we got a very interesting question on X. At McSweeney_17 asks, 94 squad versus current squad, who you got? 94 obviously being the last time the U.S. hosted a World Cup. That got us thinking about other U.S. lineups as well. 2002 when they made it to the quarters. 2014 when they were managed by Jurgen Klinsmann, the last foreign coach to manage the U.S. at a World Cup. And it all plays into this larger question. We've bestowed on this group of players the tag of golden generation and acted like they're so much more talented than anything that came before them. But some folks are wondering, are they really? So,
all right, well, let's do this then. Let's just say, for the sake of argument here, that this is the starting 11 for this team right now. We've just talked about how it's in flux. We just talked about how, there could be changes before 2026. I think, in general, people would agree that Matt Turner's in goal, a back line of Jedi Robinson. Let's put Miles Robinson and Chris Richards at center back, and then Serginho Dest at right back. A midfield trio of McKennie, Adams, and Johnny. And then up top, Pulisic, Weah on each side, and then Balogun up top. Now, I know that can change, but let's just say that is the starting lineup right now. And I think most people would accept that. Let's go back to 1994, shall we? All right. Goalkeeper, Tony Meola. Rob Stone, would you rather have Turner or Meola in goal?
Tony.
Okay, so Meola.
That wasn't hard. No offense, Matt, but I mean,
okay.
Tony Meola, are you kidding me?
Let me add, though, okay, when we go to, as Mosse mentioned, 2002, let me add Brad Friedel to the mix. In 2002 now.
Fine, Brad Friedel.
Okay. You're going Brad Friedel
over
Turner.
Yeah.
Okay.
What if I add Casey Keller too? I mean,
yeah, you can.
All those dudes.
Okay,
again,
so
no
from
offense,
a goalkeeping perspective,
I love those 3. Those guys were like
Tim Howard.
Yes.
Okay. So goalkeeping,
Why am I
Rob Stone is
yelling
very
at you?
concerned.
Yes, I am concerned about goalkeeper.
I would too take Tony Meola. On the back line, I would take, all right, so we said Jedi, Miles Robinson, Chris Richards, and Serginho Dest. In 1994, it was Caligiuri, Balboa, myself, and Fernando Clavijo. I would take Balboa and Lalas over Miles Robinson and Chris Richards, but I would take Jedi Robinson and Serginho Dest over Paul Caligiuri and Fernando Clavijo. Am I crazy?
No, I'm moving over here to show you my card. I Balboa Lawless.
Okay.
I highlighted Jedi.
Great
Dest.
minds. Great minds.
You and I are on the same page,
Great.
buddy.
Okay, does it change when you throw in 2014, Beasley, Beasler, Cameron, and Johnson? Probably
no, I'm still happy with the center back pairing of
Beasley
of
in his
you and
prime over Jedi. I still
no,
think Jedi.
No. I was just talking in the center of the park. It's hard to vote out Bees. It's really hard to vote out Bees on anything.
But is he better than Jedi Robinson?
Again, it's really hard to vote out Bees on anything.
I don't know.
That's a tough one.
I think Jedi, maybe more than anybody, and I know with due respect to Christian Pulisic, has been the most consistent, and he certainly made the most strides.
And I would keep Dest. I'd still keep Dest.
Okay, what about
Midfield.
Lewis, Berhalter, Pope, and Sene? Tony Sene in a back four.
The big cat?
Yep.
I get the big cat roaming around?
Yeah, 2002.
Man, it's hard.
As a right back instead of Serginho Dest?
I like me the big cat because the big cat does a lot of things. He and Eddie Pope does not get enough credit for how good he was in the center of the park.
So we've established that we've regressed at goalkeeper relative to this 2026 team, and we've regressed at center back.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there's an argument on the outside
For
backs.
sure.
All right. Should we move to the
Mosse,
midfield,
you
Mosse,
all right
or
with
you got
that?
something to say?
I have some bigger takes when you guys are done.
Okay.
This has turned into a Mike and the Mad Dog segment, so carry on.
Dog, I tell you, dog, no.
All right, midfield. We said McKennie, Adams, and Johnny right now in the midfield. In 1994, it was Sorber, and keep in mind it was a 4-4-2, but let's say Sorber, Dooley, Ramos, and Harks. All right? I've told you before that I think Tab Ramos is the best player to ever play for the national, or that I ever played for the national team. He's a man out of time. So I would certainly have Tab Ramos in that midfield trio there over any of those three, McKennie, Adams, and Johnny. Anybody that you would put in there?
I would.
Of
I
94.
had that. Again, I'm showing you. I had Harks. I had Harks in there as well. But I played with my midfield, and I would definitely have Adams from the current group.
Okay.
And, like, Weston, I want to love him so much. I really do.
Yeah.
And, I have so much hope for him, and he had so much promise. And I feel like I'm still kind of living off of that because he epitomized to me a few years ago of what the future of this U.S. team could be. That, to me, he was that really great blend of that grit, of that in your face, of that swagger, of that I am unapologetically who I am. I'm American. And oh, by the way, I got really good talent and I can play at a high level. I really want that old Weston back. And I kind of keep voting for him because I'm living off of what Weston was a couple years ago.
But keep in mind, in 2002, for example, John O'Brien, Pablo Mastroianni, Claudio Reyna, and Landon Donovan were a midfield. And then in 2014, Jermaine Jones, Michael Bradley, Kyle Beckerman, and Alejandro Bedoya in the midfield. I think there's plenty of guys there that I would take over Johnny. Or even McKennie. And I too love McKennie, but I think that you can certainly argue points of this we've regressed when it comes to the midfield. All right, should we go to the forwards?
So all you're telling me is we're regressing in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, maybe we're...
Guess what? It's not going to get any better when
All
we go
right,
up top.
Pulisic, Balogun, and Weah, we said up in the top three. Winalda and Stewart back in 1994. McBride and Wolf in 2002. And Josie Altidore and Clint Dempsey in 2014. My kingdom for many of these guys.
100%. All of them. I would take Winalda Stewart. I would take McBride, Wolf. I would take Josie
Pulisic
Dempsey.
is the only one that you would have a legitimate argument
100%.
when it comes to these players.
100%. And he would, listen, Christian would remain, right? He would be there. But yeah, you're right. All those other guys, Please and thank you, and twice on Sunday.
I think at one point during this pod, I said that this was not going to be all doom and gloom, Mosse. But I feel like this is what we're ended up doing here.
Can you snap us out of it,
I'm a little
Mosse?
disappointed. Our producers used the Colombia lineup in '94, which includes Ronaldo. Just to drive him crazy, they should have grabbed the Brazil lineup from around the 16.
When he didn't start? Yeah, I know.
But
don't do that to Waldo. He doesn't deserve that.
There's an old adage, no matter how much talent you have everywhere else on the field, you have to be solid in both boxes to succeed. And it is concerning that I feel like those are the areas where this U.S. team is the weakest. The one position we all agree has regressed considerably is goalkeeper. When you look at the names over the years, Miola, Frito, Keller, Howard, and I actually, that joke I made notwithstanding, really liked Matt Turner and at one point thought he was a strength and the next in that lineage of great U.S. goalkeepers, but the inactivity at club level has really hurt him. And right now, he doesn't even feel like a lock to start this next World Cup. Zach
he
Steffen
does because everybody gets injured.
He's backing in.
But he feels like a question mark, certainly. At center back, we've talked about this. I think it's the weakest position in the pool, the weakest outfield position in the pool. There's nobody there that I think is all that imposing.
Remember when Miles Robinson, before that injury, though, we were banging our chest like, here it is.
There are guys that on their day. Chris Richards
fine.
At club level has been impressive. Crystal Palace won the FA Cup. But you know what I mean. Nobody that's of the pedigree that you have in some of the other areas of the field. And then up front, I think both Pepe and Balogun have potential, but I'm not sure they're any more accomplished at this point than a Winalda, McBride, a Josie Altidore, even a Clint Dempsey who could play as that front man. So, it's concerning. There's talent in other areas, the fullback positions in the midfield, the wings, but I feel like in some of the most important positions on the field, that's where this U.S. generation is less impressive.
Okay, well, we can, we keep proving to ourselves that we are not as far along as we thought we would be or wanted to be, but that's okay. This is a interesting and fun little exercise, and you got to be truthful with yourself and everybody else out there. You got something else to say, Mosse?
No, it's interesting. In this Gold Cup squad where we're all bemoaning that it's too many new players and not enough of the first teamers, the one position where I would have liked to have seen some new blood is center back. And yet there, it's kind of a lot of the usual faces because there really is no exciting up-and-coming new center backs.
And maybe too, David, it's like we gotta get two dudes locked in, right? We gotta be married to two guys in the middle and say we're riding with you. Yep. We're riding with you this summer, which means we're gonna ride with you next summer. You gotta get that figured out.
I did find it interesting that Alexi took himself in the center back comparison.
I'll speak for Alexi. Yeah, it's the right pick.
And I never miss a chance to point this out. Marcelo Balboa inches away from what would have been the greatest goal in World Cup history.
Remember we were at the National Soccer Hall of Fame a couple weeks ago, and there was the statue out in front down there in Frisco. We were like, is that Cello getting up on his bike? Is that he? Kind of look at it. He didn't have the.
It was.
He didn't have the mustache, but
even in a miss, it was still a thing of beauty. Just incredible. All right, look. This is like I said. This is a fun little exercise, although it does expose, or continue to expose some truths when it comes to this team. We've talked a lot about the U.S. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to kind of look at the rest of the world that is going to come to our shores and be part of this World Cup tournament, because there's a lot of talent individually and a lot of big names and a lot of big teams that will be hoping to come and in the summer of 2026 win a World Cup. So don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. As we mentioned, we want to kind of look a little bit to the rest of the field and the potential when it comes to the players and the teams here. And I love a power rankings, Rob Stone, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You should have trademarked this
here
a long
we go.
time ago. You'd be a rich
power
man.
rankings here. And again, as I always say when it comes to power rankings, these are my power rankings. If you want to have power rankings, have at it. You can have your own power rankings. If you got a problem with my power rankings, you can call our State of the Union podcast hotline.
What's that phone number again? What's that number again?
It over there.
Say it slowly.
Really, really slowly. You can call our State of the Union podcast hotline. You can send us a message over there on all the different platforms out there. But this is my power rankings as we sit today. And again, it's a work in progress and it changes. All right. I'm going to go from 10 to 1. Number 10, Morocco. Love them. Sitting pretty right now in terms of World Cup qualifying. We obviously saw what they did in the previous World Cup, and I think they're going to kick on. Number 9, Mosse's Brazil. And I might even be being a little bit generous right there. Number 8, Germany. I am being a little bit generous here, but I still think that they're Germany. I still think they're going to come good in a year. Number 7, Colombia. Number 6, the Netherlands. Number 5, Portugal. And I'll be honest with you, over the last couple of weeks, this has changed when it comes to Portugal. And I think that's fair. Number 4, as much as it pains me, I'm putting England at number 4. Number 3, the defending champions, Argentina. Number 2, France. And number 1, España, Spain. Agree, disagree, Mosse?
The top 3 is inarguable. You can debate the order among them, but those are clearly the favorites. They have the combination of talent and pedigree. Argentina and France won the last 2 World Cups. They played in the last World Cup final. Spain, we know, winning everything these days, from the Euros, Nation Leagues, Olympic gold medals. So no issue with those 3. Then you have this interesting mix of countries that have the talent, like England and Portugal, maybe not the pedigree. England haven't won a World Cup in 60 years. Portugal have never won it. With countries that maybe don't have the talent right now, but have the pedigree, like Brazil and Germany. So I think overall it's a pretty good list.
Wait, I can't let you off the hook, because if you can debate the order of the top 3, then give me David Mosse's top 3. Like I said, I have Spain at 1, France at 2, and Argentina at 3.
I don't feel strongly about this, but I might flip Argentina and France.
You might flip. Okay, that's fair.
That would be the one thing I would think too. Yeah, to be the man, you got to beat the man, right? And Messi is still going, and he's got a great surrounding cast with some young kids that are coming up too.
Teams like Uruguay, teams like Belgium did not make my top 10 list. Are there other teams that you would have snuck in there? Not at the expense of your Brazil team, but.
Maybe Belgium. You know, Colombia has kind of hit the skids post-Copa America, so they have to sort of recapture that form from the first part of the cycle. So I thought you were slightly generous there, given their current
Is there another
form.
CONMEBOL team that you would have in there? The Ecuadors and those types of things?
No, I mean, the one that's been on fire lately is Paraguay, but I'm not arguing that they should be in the top 10 of power rankings. But, you know, it's interesting to go back to Argentina. Only 2 countries have won back-to-back World Cups. Italy 34-38, Brazil 58-62. And Brazil had 2 different coaches, Vicente Fiola and Aimoré Moreira. So the only coach to win back-to-back was the Italy one in 34 and 38, Vittorio Pozzo. So Scaloni's going for that in this next World Cup. And I remember going into 22, there was all this talk about how poorly defending champions had performed recently. There were 3 straight World Cups where they went out in the group stage, Italy 2010, Spain 14, Germany 18, but then France as defending champions got all the way back to the final, loss on penalties in 22. So we'll see what Argentina does, but it is tough to go back-to-back.
Now, my top 10 is, 9 of them are CONMEBOL or UEFA. Are you good with Morocco sneaking into my top 10 there?
Yeah, obviously they had that incredible run in 22, the first African nation to get to the semis. It's interesting. One of the great paradoxes in sports history is the fact that I feel like soccer is the sport where there's the most randomness in an individual game. The nature of it, it's so low scoring that one deflection, one refereeing decision at any point in the game can decide the outcome. So you would think that would lend itself in a knockout tournament to having big surprises. And yet in the 90-plus year history of the World Cup, there has never been a Cinderella out of left field winner. Only 8 nations have won the World Cup. If you go through all 22 previous World Cups, the team that won it was one that going in was considered a contender and one of the most talented teams. So is that going to last forever? Are we ever going to see that broken? Now, we've seen some Cinderella stories up until about the semis, Morocco in the last World Cup, South Korea and Turkey in 2002. Even back in 94, Bulgaria, Hristo Stoichkov, remember? Even Sweden could be considered a Cinderella. They got to the semis of that tournament. So we know Cinderellas can get that far, but are we ever going to see a team like that actually get over the top and win the whole thing? It's interesting.
I think there's probably a smaller chance of that now with the expansion. I think depth is going to be a bigger role for these World Cup rosters than it's ever been. 104 games, 72 games in the first 17 days of this World Cup. There's only 5 off days for the entirety of the World Cup. And obviously the extra games and the travel, and people are already complaining about the heat in the United States in the summer. England was talking about, like, we're going to be training in tents. Like, what tents are you training in? Like, you going over to Cirque du Soleil or Ringling Brothers? And you're like, what are you so worried about? Like, it's hot everywhere. It worries me about England. You had England down a little bit lower. I feel like there's something already in their head a little bit.
It was the same way. 2014, they made such a big deal about having to play in Manaus. Remember that?
Yeah.
They're very concerned with the surroundings.
Yeah, don't get ahead of yourself. Brazil to me is always fascinating. whenever I run into, I was at Cedar Sinai getting some checkup thing, and the nurse practitioner was from Brazil. You know, I could tell by his name right away, and I just started talking. He's like, I don't want to talk. Like, he's upset, he's bothered. It'll never be the same. There'll never be another Ronaldinho. You know, that was the last one we had. But I feel like the ship is going to be steadied really soon, and I would be optimistic that they're going to surpass your number 9 ranking.
The interesting thing about Brazil, and I'll fold this into a larger point that could even bring the U.S. into it, is, you know, no foreign coach has ever won a World Cup. And in Alexi's top 10, you have Brazil now with Carlo Ancelotti, you have England with Thomas Tuchel, Portugal with Roberto Martinez. So you do have some contenders that have gone the foreign manager route. You know, I don't think any of us think the U.S. is a threat to win the whole thing, but, you know, they've gone the foreign route as well, again, with Pochettino. So it's an interesting subplot to this World Cup. It's becoming something, you know, I always thought the international game was supposed to be about national pride. And yet with these foreign managers, very often you're seeing guys have to face their country, which we've seen Jesse Marsh with Canada and the U.S. In the Gold Cup, we're going to see Miguel Herrera as Costa Rica boss have to manage against Mexico. You know, has Thomas Tuchel thought about how it would feel if Germany faces England at the World Cup? How would Pochettino feel facing Argentina? How would Ancelotti feel facing Italy? Roberto Martinez in the Nations League final against Spain. You know, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think we've talked about how there's a school of thought that the national team coach should be like a national team player, in that they should be a citizen, and that's the team that they coach. But, you know, from an employment standpoint, that might not happen. When it comes to World Cups, we are always introduced to new players. I mean, you're staring at somebody who used the World Cup to kind of say hello to everybody. There are players that we already know. We are coming off of a few weeks here where, again, Lamine Yamal, 17 years old, playing for my number 1 team when it comes to the power rankings. So knocking on wood that he continues to stay healthy, and he's part of that team that qualifies for the World Cup next summer, when we get to see him in a World Cup. What are some of the names that are exciting you, Mosse, when it comes to next summer?
There's an interesting generational thing happening here, because you still have Messi and Ronaldo. And then you have at the other extreme, Lamine Yamal, who's only 17. And then you have Mbappe, who's right smack in his prime. So it's going to be interesting which one of them sort of grabs the headlines. Yeah, I mean, we could dig into any one of those if you want. I mean, which one that I just mentioned most fascinates you?
Which one do you think is going to resonate the most with the world, because the world is watching, but obviously on the ground here? Like, who comes out of it in the way that we've seen from a Brazil perspective in the past? Some of these players kind of use it as the platform. It's not that Lamine Yamal needs a platform, but doing it at the World Cup level is a whole nother level.
I've been saying this kid is displaying a level of precociousness we haven't seen since Pele, to be this good at this age. And Pele famously in the '58 World Cup at 17 years of age scored the winner in the quarterfinals against Wales, hat-trick against France in the semifinals, and then 2 against Sweden in the final. And that was really the start of the Pele legend. And I mean, I think the stars are aligning for Lamine Yamal to have that sort of impact. Maybe not score that many goals. That's not the type of player he is. But you know what I mean. I think the 26th World Cup, he's...
Rob, who are you looking forward to?
I mean, it's hard to argue against Yamal, but you know, I love the old goats still out there in the pasture and eating and feeding and scoring. And you know, when the 3 of us were in Qatar, you know, and Messi got it, we were like, what a great way to wrap it up. Like that should be it. And everything he's done since then, and what Ronaldo's doing as well, like, they're going to be there. If they're healthy, those guys are going to be there. They're going to be on the field. I think that's a fascinating story for me. You know, these guys just continuing to extend their prime. I think Mbappe, in his prime, like we fail to realize that sometimes, because he's been in front of us for so long. 26 years old right now. You know, the numbers he put up with Real Madrid. You know, he did his part. You were talking about that just the other day. The bitterness of how it ended, you know, in Qatar. You know, don't count him out. I feel like all these young talents have kind of not pushed him aside, but have taken some of the spotlight away from him.
Mbappe has a chance to go down as have arguably the greatest World Cup resume of any player. The fact that, I mean, I just mentioned Pele. That's going to be hard to top. Pele won it 3 times. But Mbappe is already on 12 World Cup goals. The record is 16 by Miroslav Klose. Messi, by the way, is at 13. So if he has a big tournament, he could break that as well. But Mbappe is really the one. His first 2 World Cups finished first and second. The only countries to reach 3 straight World Cup finals: West Germany 82, 86, 90, Brazil 94, 98, 2002. We think France is a real contender again. So we'll see how far they go, how many games they play, how many goals he scores. But then he probably has at least 1 more, maybe 2 more World Cups after. So what kind of numbers is this guy going to end up with on the World Cup stage?
We've kind of been at times cynical on this show today, and I think sometimes it's expected, and I think it's sometimes fair. Mosse, you mentioned, and you mentioned too, Rob, the amount of games that are being played. So I just want to marry it with a level of romanticism, if you will. Whether it's Lamine Yamal as a 17-year-old who has the world in his hand right now and an incredible future, or whether it's Cristiano at 40 and then next summer at 41 if he continues on, and by all accounts he's going to. The World Cup is something special. The World Cup is bigger and more impactful than anything else that a player can do, especially if you are successful or if you were considered one of the greats, which I think certainly Cristiano is, and Lamine Yamal is well on his way to be doing. And if and when you do it, it matters. And I do see when Pochettino talks, I do see when Deschamps talks, I do see when these players talk, that they talk about it with a reverence. They talk about it with a love that supersedes all of the money and all the fame and all the other stuff that comes oftentimes with who they are in this world, with who they play for in this world. And it makes me feel, as an older guy, it makes me feel good that this World Cup, which I know there's plenty of legitimate things that we can argue about and criticize on and off the field for, but at its core, it is this opportunity. At its core, it is this platform. And at its core, players, young and old, they will do anything to be there. And so whether it's the players this summer when it comes to the Gold Cup that have the possibility of staking their claim, or whether it's someone like Lamine Yamal who's just starting his career but is going to be there, or whether it's somebody that's old like Messi defending it in his backyard, or Cristiano Ronaldo possibly getting the holy grail that is the World Cup, it means, and you can see that it means, so much more.
That's a beautiful monologue, a perfect way to end the show. Unfortunately, I have one more point I want to make, so I'm going to break up. With Messi and Ronaldo, and we focus so much on Ronaldo, it's interesting with Messi too, because in some of the matches of greater intensity Argentina's played in the last 12 months or so, he's looked a bit off the pace, and they've had some really good performances without him, including that 4-1 win over Brazil in qualifying recently. So with both Messi and Ronaldo, we look at it as this all or nothing deal, but is there a middle ground you can find where they're on the team, they're still useful, there's a role for them, but it doesn't have to be all about them? They could maybe start some games, not others, in some instances be used as a super sub. Is there a world where that could happen, or it would just be so awkward having those guys on your team and utilizing them that way?
Portugal tried that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting over the next 12 months or so how their roles evolve and how they arrive
Look,
in 2026.
He's right there. Yeah, he's not going to go anywhere.
He would be so happy with this right now. And
please keep talking about me.
If you're just listening, we just put up the artwork, if you will, for a bunch of different teams. And when it comes to Portugal, usually we have 3 players that represent the team. We have 3 players, but they're all Ronaldo. And
location.
He would love that. I think most people would say, while that might work for Messi, and even that's a stretch, it doesn't work for Cristiano Ronaldo. It's all or nothing with Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of starting. So I think he would have a hard time accepting a lesser role for Portugal.
I don't think it works for Messi, only because of the reverence that roster and that coaching staff has for him. That he's the beacon. He is the heartbeat. He is everything to that program. And they're bringing in younger talent, and for them to play with Messi, that's inspiration. And again, we had this huge theme, like, we don't want to let him down, right? We can't let him down. And that still exists. Even though they won that World Cup, Messi's going to start, and he's going to have that armband, and he's going to start every game until they have won their group with one game to play and maybe they'll rest them.
Rob Stone, you've been incredibly generous with your time coming on the State of the Union, so I want to let you, give kind of the last word here. Usually we do my one for the road, but I specifically wanted you here because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, you've seen a lot when it comes to American soccer, and I know we've gone through a whole lot relative to this team and where we are. Glass half full, glass half empty, the cynicism that we've talked about. But I want to give you the last word when it comes to the people that are watching, the people that are listening, in terms of why they should care, why should they have faith going forward when it comes to this team, when it comes to this sport, when it comes to this tournament next summer.
I mean, we've used the phrase, and I don't use it lightly, like this is going to be the greatest event, the greatest sporting event this planet has ever seen. And for me, as a soccer fan, as a soccer lover, there is no better vehicle to get people to understand this sport and care about it and invest in it than going to a World Cup game. I remember taking my then girlfriend, now wife, driving from Albany, Georgia, down to Orlando, Florida, to watch Belgium play, I think it was Morocco. I can't remember, at the Citrus Bowl, and I didn't care how hot it was, I didn't care how humid it was, I didn't care who was playing, I didn't care what time kickoff was. Like, this is transformational. And my wife, she felt it, she understood it, she got it. And I think it's, what 94 did was so incredible. And what 99 did as well on the women's side. And I think we as a country have another bite at this apple, if you will, to reboot things and to bring this love back. We saw it when we were all in Russia. It turned into a summer of love. When are any of us ever going to be in Russia again? But what the World Cup was able to do, what that sport was able to do to people, to communities, to people of different backgrounds, whatever it is, the World Cup has that special power. And I'm so happy that my kids are going to be around and able to partake in it, and that maybe a lot of my college football friends who don't fully understand soccer are going to go to a World Cup game and they're going to get it. And I look forward to those moments of them coming to me and going, now I get it. I understand.
Well, they like a party, right?
They like a party, but they like patriotism
Yes.
too, right?
Yeah.
And also one other thing we didn't touch on, like home field advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Home field advantage is going to be really unique next summer. Obviously, it's going to be a huge part for the U.S. Obviously, it was a huge part in 94 and 99. But what our country is, it'll be very interesting to see how melting pot-y it is, how welcoming it is, how much support there will be. I think America right now has so many more soccer fans, enthusiasts than it did in 94, that people just want to go to games and they don't care who's playing and they're really excited about this opportunity. It's genuine smiles and emotion and excitement that this is coming back. And I just hope that the U.S. team lives up and shows out to a degree that placates a lot of people and makes us proud.
Mosse, you think we'll go?
When we did that host cities show to announce the host cities for the 26th World Cup, Giant Infantino predicted 26th World Cup was when soccer would surpass the NFL in this country.
Okay.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Am I setting expectations of this?
This show is about 1 year out, so we got 1 year to do it. So and it is going to go like that, and we still got a lot to do, both on and off the field. But I remain incredibly confident that we will do it. We will do it on the field. We will do it off the field. Keep in mind also that Rob Stone's taking down the number, by the way. Rob, you want to do it slowly?
657-549-2297.
Exactly. Couple of things. This Friday, definitely check out our big show. We will have a year out from the World Cup show when it comes to Fox. We'll have all sorts of mucky mucks and famous people, players, and people in the soccer world out there as we celebrate from a Fox perspective what this next year is going to be, and then ultimately what we're going to do next summer. Obviously, we have the Gold Cup coming up, and we just talked a whole lot about what that entails going forward. And hopefully, by the end of this summer, we are in a better place in terms of how we think of it. Rob Stone is already on the phone calling our State of the Union podcast hotline.
Hi, this is Rob.
There he is.
I want to tell you guys you're doing a bang-up job. You need more tight shots of David Mosse and less of Alexi Lalas. Again, that number, well, you know where to follow us with the @ and the X's and the Facebooks. What's that number one more time, Alexi? I literally am calling the number right now.
It's on your phone.
I don't know who I'm talking to. Hello, who is this? Mary? Alice? Bill?
There it is, right there. You can read it, Rob.
Where's that phone? 657-549-2297. Thank you for your time.
There it is. Tell them to smash the button over there on the old YouTube
Smash
channel.
the like button, follow, subscribe, like, share, do all those good things. And call that number! Call that number! Operators are standing by.
Oh, my goodness. I love you, Rob Stone. I love you.
more.
All right, we'll talk to you again next time. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.